Okay, thank you. Do you mind putting on your headset? It might be a bit easier to understand what I'm saying. Although there's not that much happening anymore, so you might as well hear it as well without the headset. Okay, very good. First of all, thank you for joining. I know it's the last one. You probably had a long day already, so I do appreciate you joining the session. We'll do a presentation probably about 15 minutes, and then we'll have another 10 minutes for Q&A afterwards. What I want to speak about is, as the title says, accelerating cross-border e-commerce through technology. So we have been working together with another company, ProCarrier. We've been working in a partnership where we have provided technology. As an AEB, we've been working with software, providing software solutions for logistics, trade compliance, and customs for a very long time now, about 40 years. But then with the more recent developments in the e-commerce market, we noticed that, well, there's actually a very nice opportunity there for us. So we noticed with, especially in Europe, the changes around low-value consignment, and also with Brexit, of course, there were a lot of companies looking for a solution. Also, when we think about e-commerce, and especially the volumes have been growing year after year, so that made us really focus on it, put a new brand together, focus on this type of customer, create more synergy, and work together with our customer closely to keep developing the solution. On the other hand, there is ProCarrier, who is our customer. They actually come also from a freight forwarding background, so they are part of DG International, which is a more standard, traditional freight forwarding company, really. They've created ProCarrier as a new brand for about 5 years now, and they've been rapidly growing their business. So where they were quite new into the market in the beginning, in the last years they've really increased their business, and they also noticed, okay, we've been doing quite well, but how do we now take those next steps, and especially how do we deal with the new challenges that arise with that rising volume? So that also brings us to the challenge, which is predominantly the need to scale. So coming from being a traditional freight forwarder, they noticed, okay, we already know customs, we do shipments from all around the world, so they were already quite used to doing customs clearances, but it was very much a manual thing, and that's where we got together basically speaking about, okay, how can we improve this solution, because we noticed anything customs related for them was very much a manual thing. And they were using systems for doing their own exports. They were also using brokers to deal with those volumes, but really struggling to get a hold on the volume, especially looking at peak. It was very, very difficult to scale, and they were losing out on opportunities, basically. Additionally, it also meant that with a growing business, with new customers coming on, they were struggling a lot with data quality, and that also resulted in a lot of inspection rates. So you had a mixture of struggling to scale it, customers who were quite new, not always the best data quality, and then having to use bulk clearance solutions to deal with the manual efforts. So that kind of got us talking. Additionally, as we've said, they were working with brokers quite a lot. So those brokers, it was just throwing it over the fence. You send them instructions, they will take the documents, they will take data, and then they might not respond to you. Meanwhile, you've got customers asking you what is with their goods, so that was not great. There was just no transparency to it. And in the end, it meant that there was no sleek end-to-end process. So when we started working, we looked at, okay, what is now the basis? How can we improve this? And that is really by letting the data work. So ProCarrier was already very, very good at gathering data. It was already being put to good use when we look at logistics, but when we look at customs clearance, there was still a lot of possibilities. And that's where we had a look at, okay, how does that now best fit into the solution of ProCarrier? When we think about what type of solution they have, it's typically parcel clearances. So that's where we also fit the customs clearance to logistics, meaning that you had a logistical process and customs had to be part of it without ever creating a bottleneck, or at least being, when there was an issue with it, that it would be the smallest object possible being stuck. So that's where we switched from doing bulk clearances to parcel clearances, and just provided a much smoother flow for the goods to go through the borders. Additionally, we also had it basically when we looked at the process of how the goods were flowing, we would just create certain triggers in the process. A few seconds later, the customs clearance would be done. Anything which was an issue, parcel goes on the side, rest of it continues its way in the process. That is then, as you know, there is an export to it, there's an import to it. When we speak about EU, there's also often a transit in the middle. We had all of those steps, and where it made sense, we created a trigger to send the data into the system, but of course also to take the data out of the system. So we looked at, okay, which data does ProCarrier need, which one can they benefit from, and which one can they then also provide to their customer again. So that has allowed us to take data from the customs clearances to provide that back to their customers, and that also created a lot more visibility for their customers to then be put to ease to know, okay, well, there is an issue with that specific parcel because there's an inspection or something, so I don't have to worry. I know that that's going to be delayed, and as it's often B2C, they could already inform their consumers saying, well, we've seen that there is an issue with your parcel, so therefore expect a delay of probably some hours to up to a day. That is fine when we speak about self-filing, but then we looked at, okay, they are working with brokers, looking at the EU, for example, often there is use of brokers. We did want to have exactly the same approach, so there we also worked with integrating a broker. The way the solution works, the way that software works, is exactly the same regardless of direct, so self-filing with customs or using a broker. And the look and feel should also be the same. So again, there we got the data back from the broker, then provided to ProCarrier, who could then provide it back to their customers. That has provided a solution which just created that complete end-to-end solution which you always had a certain visibility. We've set up that solution now, I think about 12 months. When we look now at the present, where we are 12 months later, we've had one peak, we've had the follow-up or the season now up to peak, and in a few weeks probably, or we already noticed that volumes are definitely increasing, so we're very curious about how that will go, but we're going with a much more certain feeling into peak. Now, what does that mean for what happened? First of all, the type or the amount of parcels which were stuck, which were delayed due to an inspection, that went down drastically. So we're speaking about having 30% of the parcels being somehow delayed in the beginning because there was something missing with the data, there was something missing with customs saying, well, I want to see this parcel. By doing parcel clearances, we were able to go well below 1%. So now when ProCarrier is reaching or getting close to 1% of parcels being held for inspection, there's very big red flags going up in the business. So just speaking about completely different held rates. Second statistic, I also have to double check with ProCarrier about, it used to be a complete team of 5 to 6 people. They would spend on average 6 hours per day, and then when it was peak, there were people involved, so you can't just make them work. There were just limits to it, whereas now we went to a solution where it's about 20 minutes per day, and there are people from the logistics team who are dealing with customs. Typically, when we speak about those 20 minutes, it's only about very much acceptance, handling, a customer who doesn't have an IOSS number or which suddenly stopped working, some HS codes, no good description, no information whatsoever. Those things could happen, but they very much became an exception. As mentioned already before, the volumes went up massively, so they're just at, don't know the exact numbers, but they have multiplied their volumes several times in comparison to last year, and we will see the same going through peak. And since the first solution that we set up, which was UK exports into EU, more specifically NL imports, we also set up further lanes which have now gone directly into Ireland, and we're just on the verge of going live with another lane going into the south of Europe to provide even quicker times for the customers so that they can provide an even better service. Now, if we look at the future, at what that means, first of all, it means that there will be further trade lanes. So Procarrier, they've got now 2 or 3 trade lanes live that will grow in the future. There will be more movements going from and to one another. I think the biggest other and most exciting thing is the returns and customs refund solution. So it's a major pain for all of these type of customers, and we've at the moment got a project ongoing to create a solution which will allow them to do the return shipments in the same manner as they're already doing forward shipments. So that is a big part about that, and I don't know how well you're into customs, but when you do import your goods again into the country of origin, in this case UK, it would mean that you have to pay import duties again, so we would get rid of that by applying for RGR. But then also there is, in the country that you just left, you've got the opportunity to ask for a refund of your customs duties, and that is something where we will basically make the software do all of the heavy lifting, and then it will just be up to Procarrier to do, to communicate with customs to send that in. But about 90–95% of the work we can already do by just the data that we've got in the solution and that we can grab. So we're at the moment working full speed on setting up the solution in the background of a returns portal so that they can create that complete flow. And then in the future, it will also fit into the existing volumes already. That in the future, there shouldn't be a difference between whether you're sending a parcel out or if you're sending a return. A bit longer term, there will also be the preparation for the EU Customs Data Hub, meaning that since I think it was in May that the EU mentioned, or they spoke about their vision for EU customs in the next 15 to 20 years, the very first thing that they want to jump on is the volumes of e-commerce. And that is something that we've got a very clear eye on to see, okay, what does that mean now for a company like Procarrier? How can we do that? And that is something that we've been in regular exchange with Procarrier to look at, okay, how, when this comes up, when there's more information available, how can we maximize this opportunity to, again, create the next step for you? I know, so normally when I was going to do the slot, I was going to do it combined with Procarrier. Sadly, we had some last minute changes. So sadly, from Procarrier's side, we weren't able to get somebody to join on stage. However, we provide the QR codes. Basically, those codes, they've got all the contact details. On the left is my contact details. On the right, it's Leanne, who was supposed to do the slot with me, who is, as you can see, head of Europe for Procarrier. If there are any questions coming up in Q&A in a minute, then I might forward them to Leanne, or you can directly reach out to her. And then I think at this point, I would say let's move over to Q&A. And then if there's any questions, I think somebody will come around with the microphone. So first of all, thank you for listening, and then happy to take any questions. Thank you. No one? Yeah.
Hi, just wondering if you've looked at any channel-specific integrations, as in, obviously there's tons of orders coming out of, say, eBay or Amazon or a D2C retailer sending across Europe. Do you integrate, do you pull the customs data out of the ERP system or out of the portal?
So when we speak about Procarrier specifically, it's about receiving data from transport management systems, so the system that Procarrier is using. When we look at ourselves, it's mostly about basically any system which can provide the right data, being that an ERP system, a warehouse management system, a transport management, and so on. We can just take all the data from all of them because we provide standard APIs which would be connected to. And then we would just look together with the customer, okay, what is the most logical use case? In this case, we mostly work on a parcel level because it just makes more sense. It fits better into the flow. But then we created, when you speak about the transit, there's no point in having a transit on a parcel level. Instead, we looked at, okay, what is now the truck level? And that's where we then create a transit on. So we just look at what fits best. But with other customers, you can also have invoices as an object. You can have airway bills, for example. So thinking China shipment into Europe, that would typically be a very big airway bill, CSV file, 30,000 lines, and that just comes in as one big file, which is then creating loads of decorations being sent off to customs. Yeah? Any more questions? Okay. Yeah. No? Thank you. Then, thanks a lot for staying for the slot, and have a nice day.